Welcome back. Take a look at when markets ended another busy earnings week. And after we got the very highly anticipated consumer price index number for September, one of the only pieces of economic data we will get during this government shutdown. The report showed inflation grew at 3%. That was slower than expected. And it comes ahead of the Federal Reserve's decision on interest rates happening in the upcoming week. Joining me now is the former Federal Reserve governor and one of the top candidates for the chairman of the Federal Reserve job. Kevin Warsh is with us. Kevin, great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Maria, great to be with you again.
And, of course, there are some questions about the accuracy of this data collection, especially since it's coming from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and it was given during, compiled during a government shutdown. What are your thoughts on the accuracy of this number, and what are your thoughts on the macro story right now?
Yeah, first, Maria, on the data, my friends over at the Federal Reserve call this data the gold standard. I think we can do better than that. I think we've tarnished this important commodity. The private sector uses much more contemporaneous, real-time data to figure out what's going on in the economy today. The data from the Department of Commerce, the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this is the best we could have done a generation ago. And I think we can do a lot better trying to figure out what's happening in the real economy instead of looking at data that's subject to a lot of revision. It tells me how the economy was a few months ago. I think we can do better. And in some ways, the only benefit of this government shutdown is I hope the Federal Reserve and other economists look to new sources of data so we've got a better guide as to what's really happening.
Well, it's interesting because now ADP says it will no longer be sharing its private payroll data with the Fed. Do you know why that is and how big of a blow this is going to be to the Federal Reserve's decision-making ability, given they already have limited amount of economic data because of the shutdown?
Yeah, so they rely on this government data. They rely on this ADP data. But again, I think they can do a lot better. There's 1,000 PhDs at the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve has access to the greatest companies in the world that have real-time data. They can talk to CEOs, they can talk to CFOs, and they can actually get their hands on data. During the government shutdown, I hope they improvise. I hope they innovate. I hope they realize that there's better data than this. But the Powell Fed is relying on this data. The data they've seen very recently, I think, continues to tell them that while they were incredibly late in cutting rates, they're on the path to do so now.
Yeah, they're on the path to do so now, but, you know, is it too late, and how many cuts should they be doing? Kevin, what's your take on what is required, what is needed to give this economy a boost, and given the fact that inflation is still pretty tame, should they be doing a string of cuts into 2026?
Yeah, well, I think that they've made a series of mistakes, not just in the last year, but the last 5 or 6 years. And I think their track record is really quite poor in forecasting the growth of the economy from policies like the ones the president put in place. And their inflation forecasts have been terrible, too. That's why they were so late, and that's why we had this surge of inflation that's done the most harm to the hardest working Americans among us. So that track record, I think, still matters, Maria. The reason why most households, most businesses think that inflation is going to still be well above 2% is because that's what the Fed's delivered. I think until there's regime change at the Fed, until there's new people running the Fed, a new operating framework, they're stuck with their old mistakes. Bygones aren't just bygones. The real reason we've had progress on the inflation front isn't because of the Federal Reserve, in my view, Maria. It's because of the president's policies. His policies have strengthened the economy. His policies have lowered prices. But unfortunately, the Fed's working at cross purposes with him. And I, frankly, quite understand his frustration.
Yeah, and in fact, one of his most important policies is getting the supply chains back to America so that the U.S. is not reliant on communist China, our #1 adversary. What are your thoughts on the president's trip? He is in Asia this weekend. We'll be meeting with Xi Jinping on Thursday. What can he accomplish?
I think he can accomplish a lot, especially coming on the heels of the incredible deal that he and his team did in the Middle East. Marie, as you know, success begets success. Success is contagious. I think the rest of the world looked at the success in the Middle East, and they've got new respect for what a U.S.-led global alliance can do against the Chinese Communist Party and against other adversaries.
Kevin, it's great to see you this weekend. We so appreciate your time and, of course, your knowledge on it all. Thank you, sir.